All these benefits of I can live in a location right on the beach or right near the beach. I've got these facilities like a pool or a tennis court or things that I could never dream of having that I get on holidays, but I can dream of living in that.
So today we're here with Daniel Herbert from SSKB, SSKB's CEO. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Brokers Boardroom.
Pleasure, Syd.
Daniel, I'm intrigued. How does someone wearing the green and gold for the country, playing for many tests for Australian Wallabies, come to wearing the hat of a CEO of SSKB in the field of strata?
Yeah, so how I ended up here was, I don't think anyone ever gets into strata by choice. I think you fall into it. There's no uni course, no TAFE course. I mean, for me, it was different. I didn't know anything about body corporate or strata, other than my mother lived in one, and the chairperson of her body corporate was a nun, so Sister Patricia, and my first foray into that was my mother, who was a pensioner. Dad had passed on, and Mum's levies went through the roof, and so I knocked on the door of the Sister Patricia and wanted to know answers as to why Mum's levies had gone up, and that was around the same time I met the previous owners of SSKB, and I remember meeting with them, and they asked me the same thing, do you know much about it? And I said, not a clue, haven't got a clue. And they said, doesn't matter, that's actually a good thing. We actually want new ideas to come into the industry and into our company, and they said it's a people game. And one thing that's stood with me since then is it's about the people. You look after our people, those people then look after our clients, and it's a virtual cycle. So we've always aimed to do that.
So you've identified that strata is ultimately a people game. You've played on some of the biggest sporting fields there is. How do you tie in some of those lessons you've learned on the pitch into strata and into your role as a CEO?
Well, sport plays a really important part within Australian society. It's an important part of the fabric of the country, and we all know, whether it's as a father, as a grandparent, as a business manager, everything you can learn in one aspect of life, a lot of it can be transferable into another aspect. And some of the things you pick up as an individual athlete. I played tennis as a young kid. I really liked the discipline. I liked a lot of things around the individual sport, that you're in control. The harder you work, you get the benefit out on the field or on the court. When it comes to a team sport, sometimes it matters how well you do your job, but you've actually got to get the most out of other people as well. And I think that was something that I learned. There's two aspects to it. As an up-and-coming young player, you just want to do your best. You want to work hard. You want to get the attention of the decision makers. In this case, the coaches and the selectors. They'll generally reward attitude. So you want to make sure that you've got some talent, but also your attitude is first class. And if you do that, you've got those two aspects. You're going to get an opportunity. Then it's about how you take that opportunity on the big stage. And in business life, for me, it's been similar in some ways. And I think as you progress through as a young player into a senior player, and as I started to be given opportunities around the leadership of those teams, first as it might be as a member of the leadership team, then it's as a vice captain or a captain, you kind of start to work out that my ultimate goal, the end goal, is to win stuff. You want to win the title or win the championship. To get there, my performance matters that much. But actually the team performance, and I'm only one microcosm of that, I've got to try and get the best out of everyone. And then you work out, well, what barriers are within that? And then there's all these different personalities and egos that you have to try and manage and massage at times. And I think it's the same where, particularly in the strata world, you're dealing with lots of different personalities, and it comes down to communication is so important. And so I remember the penny drop moment for me was as a captain at the Queensland Reds. There was a player there who I didn't think was working as hard as everybody else, and it frustrated the hell out of me. But what I learned out of that whole experience is people have different values. They're wired differently. What matters to one guy doesn't matter to another guy. So you've ultimately got to try and find that connection point with them. And what's the overarching thing that connects everyone to that common goal? And it's different for everybody. You can't treat everyone the same. We're different personalities. And so I worked out at that stage there needs to be a glue. So someone, and your role in a leadership role is to be the glue between the workers who are doing the hard work. So you're trying to filter all of that stuff, that emotion and those egos and I don't mean ego as a dirty word either. I mean it as everyone's got one. So you're trying to work out the personality differences and trying to work out how do we all
and get the best out of it. So strata, it's such a niche space. You've gone from doing what you do as a professional athlete, managing. You've spoken about, team tactics and getting the best out of people. How do you do that in strata when you've got stakeholders, committee members, you've got your own team at SSKB as strata managers? How do you tie it all together and get the best out of people?
Yeah, I think it's complex, but I think sport's complex as well. And I think it's empowering your staff, training your staff, empowering your staff to do the right thing. And that can be very complex because people are wired differently. It's busy, in this day and age of technology, it makes things more instant. So people send an email, they want to respond straight away. And that can be difficult because it's we've got lots of different clients and lots of different needs that we're trying to massage at any given time. But it's about stakeholder management and communication. And I think we're in a really interesting time right now where, the internet really only came into being in the mid-90s. And so your and my history at school and so forth, we weren't connected to that. We are now, but not like our kids are. Our kids are coming through there, they've always been connected. So I think we're at this interesting age where particularly our committees and probably caretakers and on-site managers are probably of that vintage as well, where they're connected like you and I are, but not like our kids are. So we're in this transition period from the Gen Xers who are often in these decision-making roles on committees and also working for companies like us, to the next stage is going to be where they're completely connected, and we need to provide solutions for that. So we're still in this hybrid version, I think, right now, and I think every company is. But it comes down to whether that communication is via an app or whether it's via phone, via email. It's just about communication. I think where the frustrations occur is where that stops or where there's a lag and people don't know what's going on. We try to structure the company and so that the client-facing people have the time on their hands to be able to talk to people.
But it's one thing to be able to develop an app. It's another thing to be able to support people and guide people through using that app and get the best out of that app.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of having an app? So we've already addressed that strata is a people game. And if we put the hat on as a CEO of SSKB and you're managing your staff to get the best out of them, and strata, it's a complicated game. You've got emotions, you've got opinions, you've got stressful situations, you've got legislation. How do you guide and coach or mentor your staff to get the best out of them to deal with those difficult situations?
I think it comes down, so very start, recruiting the right people.
Right.
So I think by and large, customer service is customer service, and you're wanting to do the right thing for your customers or your clients. So I think first and foremost, that's the key. If you can get the right person who's malleable and wants to give good service, the problem is where you have people who are more interested in being right than they are about actually looking after the needs of the customer. How you make them feel is very important. So you want to attract, and I think we do by and large, we try to filter out through the recruitment process people who really want to deliver customer service. And that's not everyone. They might say, people might be looking for a job, but actually, do you want to deliver good customer service? You try and iron that out. We like to get people who aren't who are new to the industry. I think part of our role, the industry doesn't have enough people to service the needs right now, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. I saw something the other day from the Queensland government. 65% of Queensland by 2050 are going to live in strata title communities.
Amazing,
so now we don't have enough people within the industry broadly to service the current needs. So we see part of our job is to recruit people into the industry. We have a good employee value proposition. We then look to train them. We've got a head of training here, our head of people and culture.
Is it Peter?
Peter,
He's great.
Peter, he's come out a 30-year school teacher, deputy principal, dean of students, nudgy boy. Don't hold that against him. He's big on education, training, and so we try to attract the right people who have it innately in them. Then we try to develop the right skills, and then internally, one of the things is making sure you promote the right people, and they can see the people that are being given opportunities.
Look after good people.
They're demonstrating those sorts of things and behaviours when they're getting opportunities within the company, and we're rewarding that publicly in front of people, so they deliver great service. When we do stuff things up from time to time, when we do stuff up, I really see that as a good opportunity to do a deep dive, because sometimes you find something else you weren't looking for, but you find something there that actually, that's a process from a bygone era that you're using, not this current process, or something that you end up finding some really valuable information, and we see that as a real learning opportunity. So, we had one last week. We had all the exec and all the senior management around this one tiny issue, but we actually found something that was really beneficial that now we're changing our process because there's high risk around it if we don't. You try and hire, train, elevate the right people, and then the rest of it takes care of it.
I think you've touched on a number of key points. You're constantly evolving with the changing times. That's you've got to be in the forefront of some of these things, and I think you're doing a good job.
Yeah, well, I think within that there's also, I mean, we all know about emotional intelligence and the ability to have empathy toward other people, but I think one of the overarching things right now is context as well. So contextual intelligence, understanding where the industry is right now and where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years time, and what the needs of the customer are now versus where they're going to be. And I think we're in a really interesting space, as I said before, this hybrid version where we have to build the capability for where the industry's we think the industry's going to go, and we're all of the companies sort of we're all second guessing where that might be. But we also have to deliver the old. We still have people who like to come in for a cup of tea, sit down, have a chin wag, versus the person. My kids, they'll be doing it through the app. They won't be doing anything else. We've got people who've never been into a bank before, to deposit or take out money versus, we've still got people who love to come and have a muffin and coffee. So we're walking that balance between the two, and that may be the case for another 10 or so years that we have to do both. But it will change in future.
So you jumped in, you took the deep dive in 2017 and took the reins of CEO of SSKB. Obviously, there's in that time frame, there's been some interesting changes in legislation, and the industry has changed so much in such a short period of time. One thing that you might be proud of that you've achieved thus far, and perhaps what you're working on for the rest of your tenure.
Yeah, so the app was something we started developing about 4 or 5 years ago, where we were the first in market. We're very proud of that. It continues to evolve. I think we're in version 3 now. And where we've got to now is we were able to adapt it to certain clients. So we can start to bring in facilities booking for particular clients. We brought in a breach tile. One particular client had issues with breaches in the car park, so we've added a breach tile. So we've been able to be a little bit adaptive around that technology. And it's hard because there's different software that it needs to have APIs into. But that's been really popular. We've got now, I think, 15,000 of our owners on that. Wow. That's working well. We've developed a new portal. So we're developing some technology products, which for me, we need to have them because we'll get there in the future where it's just going to get there. So, and there is a number of our clients already who are there, so we need to cater for them. From what would make me most proud, I think, for anyone coming from a sort of a team background is when you see people come through the ranks and you give people opportunities. And I won't limit it to 1 or 2 people, but there's people who, when I joined, I didn't know whether they'd make it or I didn't know what capability they have, and over time I've just seen them go into progress through the company into roles where they're now leading. I see my job as the facilitation of leadership. So I'm trying to give the right people the opportunities to come through, make sure that they demonstrate the right behaviours and values that we want in the company, that they're always making sure that they protect the company but also our clients. We're seeing some really good young leaders come through, and that's the proudest thing.
I've got a few questions later on down the track around technology, but you've just mentioned the app. SSKB are very proud to have an app. Talk us through some of the higher levels on what the app achieves for a scheme, for a lot owner, and how it streamlines the process of making sure everyone's sort of moving in the same direction.
Yeah, sure. So we look at it, I've touched on before, around we want clients to be able to interact with us however they need to. So some, that's coming in for a cup of coffee. For some, that's, no one, Howard Stewart, who was the first S in SSKB, he had a famous quote within SSKB where he said, no one jumps out of bed in the morning wanting to talk to a body corporate. So we understand that for some people, that's just not what they want to do. So if you don't want to do that, you can still manage all of your affairs. You can still vote. You can still get the agendas, the minutes. You can download all of our digital forms. You can fill them out on your phone. Levy notice. You can all of it. Pretty much all of it you can handle. We call it management by thumb. So we would like to think that if that's what you want to do, you can still be fully informed and fully engaged using the app only. And we call it management by thumb. And hopefully but if you want to be more involved, then of course you can be. But we do, we're continually adapting. I touched on, we've now got a breach notice style, so we know that parking is one of the 4 Ps of body corporate living. Parking is always a pest. So, We've developed a breach tile so that members of the community, this particular community that we were talking to, that was a big issue for them. So we worked on developing a tile specifically for them. We've now rolled out to everyone if they want to use it, whereby you can load a breach, you can go straight to, you can take a photo of the car, you can send it through how it's it's against the bylaws. It goes to the committee. You can add some notes. The committee can sit there and say yes or no, and then it's automatically sent out. So that was important for them. So we developed it, and it's available for every client. But we're continuing to evolve it. But we just want to make sure that, again, we'll get to the point where there's still people who want to come in and have the face-to-face. And it was really built with the committee in mind. So when we started the concept of the app, we talked about who was our customer. And really the people that we have most interaction with on a day-to-day basis are the committees who are voted on by the owners, and they vote them in to deal with these day-to-day aspects. So we built it with the committee in mind. And so I'm not going to say it's the finished product. It'll continue to evolve, but it's working well, and it'll continue to be an important touch point for us with our clients. So we just got to make sure the functionality continues to be better and easier. But it's working well. As I said, we've got about 15,000 of our owners on it now, and it's working well. But it's not built with the tenant in mind. It's built with the owner and the committee member in mind.
So you're in the back of an Uber, and the Uber driver says, "So, what do you do for a living?" How do you explain your industry, and how do you explain your role in that industry?
I would start by saying there's two different answers. One, the first thing I always say is just property management. Depending if they want to be engaged, usually it's just a throwaway line. But when people ask me, I generally say property management, something like that. If they then have a second follow-up question, what area, then I understand they know what they're talking about. Because if you try to say, I started to say when I first started in the role, strata manager, body corporate management, the eyes glaze over. They don't really know. Most people, and I'm not critical of that, I didn't know because I'd never lived in one. I then go into, we do the legislative side of strata, and we're not the on-site, we work with the on-site, we work with the committee, and then just explain how the three different pieces work. But that tends to end the conversation pretty quick.
So for the benefit of someone coming into the industry for the first time, you've got brand new buyers, green on-site managers. What's the glue? What's the catalyst for a successful working relationship between a building manager in a scheme to a strata manager, and what are the founding principles for a successful relationship?
Yeah, similar to what we were talking about before around within a team. I would see this triangle between the on-site manager, the committee, and the strata manager. That's a management triangle, and you need all three sides of it working together. That means strong communication. I think working your way back from what do you want to achieve? You want to achieve a harmonious community, and you want your asset to maintain its value. So to do that, I think there's an important triangle, and that's the on-site manager, the strata manager, and the committee. And all three of those, there needs to be, we touched on before around teamwork. That's a team. So that team need to be working together, strong communication. Another thing is education. And this is, we talked about at the moment, I think it's about 15% of Queensland's population live within a strata tile community. It's going to get to 65% within a short period of time, So it's going to become more and more important, and we're going to see more conflict than we've ever seen unless we gear up. So we see part of our role as well is the education side of it. So it's something we've developed and started to roll out with our clients, is giving them really clear guidelines around what their role is and where people start to. So that's our guide for the body corporate. That's our role for the committee. And we're going to develop those as we go, because we just think it's important that people understand their role. So where our job starts and finishes, where the on-site manager role starts and finishes, and what actually is the remit of the committee on behalf of the owners. So it's important that those barriers or understanding is there at the start, and then that the three parties are really working harmoniously together, because a good on-site manager will increase and at least maintain the value of the asset, and that's a really important aspect to get it right, and to make sure that our role within that is working harmoniously with the two other parties.
So that framework, that guide is absolute gold, and I think everyone should know their role. And when it's in black and white, geez, it makes it easier for everyone to understand. The goalposts in strata are ever changing. Everything's developing at a rapid rate. Where do you see the strata world in the next 5 to 10 years? What are you sort of looking forward to? And perhaps what might keep you awake at night thinking about trying to find a solution?
Yeah, I think the industry's going to become more and more important, which means there's more people moving in, which means there's going to be more potential conflict, which means it's going to get on the radar of government. Now, we've seen recently in Queensland and New South Wales in particular some recent legislation tweaks. I wouldn't call them overhaul, I'd see them tweaks. Where I'd like it to go and where it'll go is probably two different things. I mean, I think we saw, if you go back to COVID and how we as a country dealt with COVID, by and large across the world, you'd probably say pretty well. But I would say internally, what was messy was you had all the different premiers up there and we had different rules in every state. What you want to drive, and I think with population growth and look with the Olympics coming up here in Queensland, it's going to be a boom time. What you want to make sure we're promoting is confidence in the market and I think consistency. And I think one thing that should be across the board is there should be things that across the strata legislation we just agree is national. And I think that would promote confidence for investment, for people purchasing. We've got up here in Queensland, or everywhere, the new 5% deposit. We've got problems around actually stock availability of stock and supply and demand. But I think one of the things that would just give people a little bit more confidence is consistency and simplicity. So depending on which state you go to, it's more complex, it's different. And we work across 3 different states on the eastern seaboard, and it's different wherever you go. And it's complicated, and it's complicated for us to try and manage, well, in that state it does this, in that state actually it's a different thing. So I think if we can make sure across there's got to be, because I think it will become more important for government.
So a bit of uniformity maybe.
Some uniformity, and I think you'll always have state governments and you'll have locations and geographies where they have unique aspects that are unique to them, and there's got to be some flexibility around that. But by and large, buying a property should be pretty similar. And it should be consistent. You should be, as a consumer, you shouldn't have to be versed in all these different legislations. It should just be, okay, well, across the board, I pretty well know what I'm getting into. I touched on before where it's, in terms of, it's going to be across the board. Queensland's going to be probably more pronounced in terms of 15% to 60 odd percent over the next 25 to 30 years, and that's a government report. So that's going to get all of a sudden that's going to get a lot more attention, and I think so. The industry is right for becoming more known. I think people will need to understand it a hell of a lot better. If I had a golden wish there, it would be that people have to have some level of training to come onto committees, that we see part of our role is to educate people. And whilst people generally, you can make the decision, I don't want to be involved, but where the conflict often happens and what we see is where, because of the apathy of not wanting to know and then thinking that, particularly downsizing, going from living in my house where my home is my castle, I can do whatever I want. Going into a body corporate is different. You're in a community title scheme, you've got lots of neighbours who share walls. All these benefits of I can live in a location right on the beach or right near the beach. I've got these facilities like a pool or a tennis court, or things that I could never dream of having, that I get on holidays, but I can dream of living in that. So the proximity, the facilities, and also the expense is less than living in a, you've got 1/100th or 1/300th of an insurance bill as opposed to, your home insured. So there's all these benefits, but there are all these things that you need to know that go with it. And I think once you're educated on that, and people are educated on that, it just removes the potential conflict and obstruction that you have. And so I see that as part of our role as an industry, is to educate as people come in. So we send out our owners pack, we give them these books to let them know, well, here is where your job starts and finishes, and the on-site manager starts and finishes. And there are some where it is in the grey, and we need to work together on making sure that we get a good solution. But I think it's going to become, I think the industry, it's going to have half of our population living in it, where at the moment it's nowhere near that. So it's all of a sudden, I think the government are going to start to turn their attention to it, and it's going to become big business.
So we've briefly touched on it, but let's talk a bit more about tech. With the rapid advancement and latch on of AI, data security and the evolution of the way the communities are progressing, you think it's going to be the way of the future? Is it going to be, this is what SSKB are going to do, or do you think we're still going to be hamstrung or governed by some sort of legislation state by state?
I think on data security it'll be a national approach. I mean, it is now, so I don't see that changing. But I think in terms of the onslaught of AI, and I'm old enough now, showing my age, to remember when www won't catch on, the World Wide Web won't catch on, don't worry about it, it's too cumbersome, it's too slow. I remember touring with rugby in the mid-90s, plugging in the cord into the phone and getting that noise, connection noise down the, and it took forever to download any sort of email. And I remember, I also remember watching something a number of years ago, and it was talking about the power of 10 in technology, that even EV cars, as another example, a lot of people will death ride saying they're not going to happen, but what will happen is their range will get better, they'll get cheaper, and they'll become more efficient, more cheaper so to own. And it's just the way. I think to sit there and say it's not going to catch on, or it won't be something in our future, then I think that would be a little naive. I'm more of the school of understand it. There'll be benefits and there'll be risks with everything. Embrace it, because you might as well learn about it, because I don't think it's going back in the bottle. I think the genie's out and we've got to deal with it. And there will be benefits that come from it, like there were benefits from the web.
So how does SSKB getting in front of that curve, and how are they developing at a rate to sort of be that market leader for the time to come?
Yeah, so we opened up a new internal department a couple of years ago, our innovation department. So we've got our head of innovation here who's looking at, we're looking at other markets, we're looking at other industries, seeing what's happening. And, you generally look to the US in this space and what they're doing, and you look to big business, banks, anything that's dealing with multiple, big numbers of customers and what they have to do. And if you look, banking's a good example of where we all used to have to go into the branch. We all used to have to go and submit a deposit form. None of that exists anymore. Well, you can go into a branch, but it's rare. So it's, we will go that way. We're not there yet. So through our innovation department, we've got people there who are working on what those products will be, both now, but also where we think it'll be in the future. And so that's something that we felt a number of years ago we just had to get ahead of, because if we don't, the old adage, what would happen if if Amazon or Google came into your space? And now we're not big enough for those big players to come in. But I touched on before, 60% of the population is going to live by 2050. It starts to become big business. And what we're seeing in the industry right now is a consolidation within. We're already seeing the private equity firms. We're seeing big business start to take an interest in strata, because it is something that's over the next 20 years is going to become far different to what it is now. Part of that's going to be technology driven, but I still see human interaction as important. Technology is just the enabler. It will enable you to do that better. So we see our role even structurally here. We have 8 people behind that door there. We have 8 people who sit on the phone every day talking to owners. So we free up our managers to deal with the committees, and we have 8 people sitting there in that room who are just taking calls from owners every day, dealing with a lot of the inbound email inquiries. So that otherwise in smaller firms, they're dealing, those strata managers are dealing with all of that, all of the owners, all of the committee members, and it just becomes too burdensome. So I think what we'll start, we've got that structurally. We think innovation-wise, we have to develop the product because it's going to get there whether we do it or not. And then it's looking, it's benchmarking, looking at other industries and what they're doing, because although everyone would say each industry is a little bit unique, ours is a little bit unique in some ways, but everyone is unique. So there's lots we can learn, and that's, our view is, we can't be intrinsic. The solution doesn't generally sit within, it sits outside.
Yeah, the Rolling Stone gathers no moss, right? So you've been asked, hypothetically, to do a TED Talk. Your audience is every strata lot owner in the country. What kind of message would you, as a CEO of SSKB, like to give that audience?
Syd, my first answer to that question would generally be I don't give advice unless I'm asked, or it's to my kids. But given that you have asked, what I'd say in a TED Talk, and it's every strata, I'd say a different one for government. If I was talking to government, I'd have a very different answer. If I was talking to strata residents, it's probably the same advice I give young sportsmen who sometimes reach out to me and say, what would your advice be on, should I play here, should I play overseas, should I play at that state, should I go to that state? I always say the same thing is, it depends. It depends on what the outcome is that you're looking for. If you want to go into a body corporate or live in a strata title community and you want to have no interest in anything, you want to appoint a committee and you trust that they're going to do the right thing and you want to stay out of it, that's your prerogative. And you can do that. But understand that by doing that, you're not taking an active interest and you are passing on the responsibility. And you don't want to always do it, but I'd be more of like, because what I often see happening is people who have a very passive interest, then when something doesn't suit them, they then become very agitated. And so you say, well, if you only got involved, then you'd actually understand, and actually no one's done anything wrong here. They've actually gone through the right process. You just haven't seen it until now. And it might be something like a special levy, where actually the building is in decay. They need to do a special levy because it's reached that point. And people don't like handing over a cheque. I get it, but you know what? You understand going in. And I think if I did a TED talk and I was saying something to people, it'd be get educated. You know, if you're downsizing, understand it's not the same as living in a freestanding house. If you're going into a body corporate, understand there are certain responsibilities and obligations you now have. And I guess my pitch to government would be make that education an obligatory part of ownership within a strata.
In many respects, Dan, you're the perfect person for this role. You've been in a team environment. Strata community is a team environment. I think, would it be fair not to say, if you're considering going into strata for the first time, consider yourself as being a team player, not an individual? Because to get the best result out of a strata, you sort of have to be a team player, right?
Well, you have to understand, you don't have to take an active interest, but you've got to understand that by not taking an active interest, other people are now making the decisions on your behalf. And they will do, by and large, they will do the right thing and they will do the best role they can. But they're volunteers as well. So we're not, we're there to provide guidance and specialist advice around the legislation. There's certain things we don't provide advice that we're not specialists on. But you are going into a strata titled community. Say there's another 100 apartments. You are one of those, and you all have an obligation, whether you like it or not. There are barriers and obligations that you all have to each other now, and they're not onerous, but you just have to understand what it is. You can't have these loud parties at night because it actually interferes with the enjoyment of other people who share walls with you and underneath and share roofs and floors with you. You just can't do that now, and people need to understand that going in. And once you understand that, then it would remove so much of the conflict that we see if people understood that.
So you've built a career on performance. Perhaps is there anything linking the sporting disciplines and the performance values there with your role now? And is there a principle that you'd live by in your current position right now?
There's probably a number of things. It's what sort of brings you back to your compass. You got a moral. We've all got a moral and ethical compass, and really it comes down to whether you're on a board, whether you're in an exec position, a CEO, it comes down to the wisdom of your decision making. And we don't always get it right. No one always gets it right, but you've got to get it right more often than not. And but I think the decisions, as long as you've got the framework around why you make certain decisions, you might make a decision that's not in your commercial interest, but it's the right thing to do. I've always had this very strong, put into me by a very strong Catholic upbringing around the Catholic guilt. You do the right thing. You do the right thing by people. You treat them how you want to be treated yourself. And and then when it comes to performance and high performance, it's the thing that's always stuck with me is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I never consider myself in that sporting scope as the most talented, but I thought I could outwork everyone, and so that gave me the confidence to then perform. And so I sort of bring that same analogy into my professional life after sport. Is you've got to work hard, but you also got to make smart decisions on the way. And it's not always now. Where I probably temper it a little bit is as you get older, is that you get more acquired wisdom, and hopefully you've been in that position a lot of times before, so you kind of know how it goes, and then you're trying to now mentor and help other people who are in that same position, and you don't want to make their decisions for them. You want to actually give them, well, that could happen or that could happen, and it's up to you to make the right decision. So I've tried to, I see my role now as, look, you have certain financial responsibilities as a CEO. You've got to make sure the company's in good health. We're responsible for 100 people, making sure that they have gainful employment, can pay their wage. We can pay their wages so they can pay their mortgages and living expenses, etc. So I take that responsibility, and I haven't always been in a company where that's been
on your shoulders.
That's that weight bears heavily on you. And so I see that as a really important part of our role. Or of my role, but also making sure the company's sustainable. It's growing. We all have a growth mentality. We're responsible for someone to grow the business, but also to do the right thing. I think the reputation, something that we're entrusted to do. Your reputation is key. We've been around now forever. Really, Howard Stewart, the first S I mentioned before, he was one of the pioneers of the legislation in Queensland. So we've been around since Adam was a boy, and so that reputation is as doing the right thing. I think we've got a position where we do what it says on the can. You know, they can do that job. They're also looking at the future. You know, that's what I'd like to think people think of us, and they've got some really good people who care about their clients. You know, we're not going to claim to be Amazon, Google, but we will be there to try and service you in the best way we can. And I'm hoping that comes through our senior leadership team through to the client-facing people.
So we'll finish off with a bit of fun, a bit of an impromptu, wrap up. I'll give you a word, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
One word?
One word. I'll give you one word, and you get whatever comes to your mind, just say it. So word number 1, community.
Title.
Word number 2, vision.
Leadership.
Word number 3, strata.
Industry.
Word number 4, technology.
Necessity.
Word number 5, rugby.
Passion.
Oh, I thought you were going to say wallabies. Dan. Dan, I just want to say thank you very much for your time today, your insight, your vision, and the information you've downloaded today is very insightful. I couldn't have asked for a better guest. So thank you very much, and I love the work you're doing. SSKB are in safe hands with all the framework you're putting into place, and under your directive, they're going in the right direction. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Very kind. Thanks,
Thank
Sid.
you.
My pleasure.